This is Samsung's new mid-range phone, the A52 5G model I have here. Now my unit has 8 gigabytes of RAM and 256 gigabytes of storage. So the spec of this one, if you don't know, it's powered by the Snapdragon 750G mid-range chipset for a mid-range phone. It does have a 4,500 mAh battery, an optically image stabilized 64 megapixel main camera, 12 megapixel ultra wide, and a 32 megapixel selfie camera, and there's even a 5 megapixel macro camera. So in the box of the A52 5G, you will find a warranty card, a quick start guide, our USB cable to Type-C, and the charger. So this charger is 15 watts only, and it will take 1 hour and 20 minutes to fully charge the A52 5G, and we do not get a case in the box. And if you are looking for a case for your nice new shiny phone, I do recommend these ones here from ESR. They are sponsoring this particular video here, so with their help I was able to buy the A52 5G to review for you guys. And let's have a look at the case quality here. So very good, there's no terrible sharp edges or anything like that, really high quality. They have a raised lip around here for the camera, which is called their camera guard. And I'll just quickly show you the phone inside the case here. So you see it covers the buttons, giving good protection, a good bit of drop resistance here, and perfect cutouts there for all of the ports on the A52 5G. Now they do have this style here as well, if you're after a gray color with a kickstand. Again, really high quality, these cases. And this kickstand, this is made out of metal, so you can put the phone in it and then just simply prop it up like so. They have a clear style one as well that they sent out to me. So if you're interested in these cases, do check the link in the description of the video. This color here, Samsung calls Awesome Blue. And you can kind of see why they call that. It is a very nice blue color. I do like it, and that's why I ordered the blue here. Now, the plastics on it, I thought it would have a matte finish to it, a rubberized finish, which I was a bit worried about because later it can get a little bit slimy and even sticky later on, but it doesn't, okay? This is a very slippery kind of plastic they've used. It does have a bit of a cheap feel. This is me nitpicking here a little bit. When I first handled it, it does feel a little cheap, okay? And yes, it is their mid-range phone. It's definitely not a flagship. So with our camera department here, right here, we've got a 64 megapixel main camera with optical image stabilization, phase detection, autofocus, f1.8 aperture. We have two 5 megapixel cameras. Now, one is for depth information, the other is dedicated to macro shots. You'll notice that this 5 megapixel camera is not even centered correctly in the camera. With the lens there, it's slightly off-centered, which bugs me a little bit. Dual-tone LED flash, a 12 megapixel ultra-wide there, and yes, it does raise up a little bit the camera bump there, and it will probably be prone to scratches, because even with my finger now going like that, it sometimes leaves a little bit of a mark there. The weight's not bad, so it's 190 grams, and the thickness of it is decent too. It's about 8.5 millimeters. That's not including the camera there. So we have a volume up and down button right here and power on. This is made out of plastic. All around the frame is plastic, and it's finished with this metal-like paint they've gone over the top to give it a more premium finish to it. Now in hand, it feels good. Easy access to the power button, but what I don't like is the location of the fingerprint reader here is far too low. It should be about here like other manufacturers. And you'll see that when I do that again and scan, that the accuracy is about 90%. Okay, it's working for me, and it's reasonably fast, but it's certainly not the quickest I have seen. I'll do that one more time. It's okay. It's not too bad there. So the bezels around the outside here, they're not going to break any records. They're reasonable, okay? They're not too bad. There's a bit of a chin here, but I have seen slimmer on other phones here. So the front-facing camera, this one is 32 megapixels, and if I hold it up to my camera here, you'll see it has that glowing ring around it. Well, it's not glowing, but it reflects. And the reflecting ring here, I find a little bit annoying, and this first came in with the Samsung S20 FE. I don't know why they draw so much attention to that. You can see when it's powered off, it stands out just way too much, and I don't like that at all. So I think if it was black, it wouldn't stand out so much there, and that would be pretty good. So this doubles as our earpiece loudspeaker as well. The loudspeaker down the bottom right here. Type-C port, this is USB 2 spec, so no video out from this. And 3.5mm headphone jack with good quality microphone. And up the top here we have a secondary mic and our SIM tray, which does take micro SD cards, but you have to give up on one of the nano SIMs. It will take 2 nano SIMs, and it does have a gasket around it for the IP rating this phone has. So overall, the build quality, average, And they could have done a little bit better, I believe, Samsung, even for the price it sells for. Our screen here is a Super AMOLED, of course, from Samsung, being a Samsung phone, 6.5 inches. It is full HD plus resolution, 120 Hz. Touch response is excellent. I've never had any mistouches, any issues, no ghost touches, nothing like that. Now, with this screen, there's a couple of things I wanted to point out that I've noticed that maybe others haven't picked up on, but I do believe that this is not a fully laminated screen that they have used, Samsung, probably to cut down on the production costs. But when you take a look at the edges of it, and if you look at certain angles, I can clearly see a tiny little gap between the touch digitizer glass and then the AMOLED panel below it. Very, very small gap. It's probably 0.5 millimeter, almost indistinguishable. But when you look at blacks, they're not quite as deep as, say, the fully laminated, the one glass solution, optically bonded screens and flagships would be. It's very, very minor, but you do notice it more a little bit in direct sunlight. So notice that it's not quite as good as other AMOLEDs. Even though the brightness does top out close to 800 nits, it's not quite as good, marginally. And this is me just nitpicking a little bit here. And here you can see with some black colors that it is very deep. Those blacks, of course, being an AMOLED, and uniformed color with the whites and everything. So that is good to see. All up, this is above average screen in a phone. Of course, it's a mid-ranger, is great to see. This panel, of course, has all your typical modes here that you can adjust the white balance. You've got the different saturation modes, eye care mode, all of that, adaptive brightness like all phones have. But what is missing is DC dimming, sadly, is not present in this phone, and I didn't expect it at the price. So some people may see this banding. It's only coming through on camera at the moment, but if you're very sensitive to AMOLED screens and their flicker due to the pulse width modulation, you may see this, sadly, with this panel because it does not have that DC dimming. So the haptics when typing on this and the vibration we get if you set it and enable it with the keyboard is okay. The haptics I would rate here as being very, very average with this particular phone. Now the gestures I have on, and I found the animations tend to be pretty quick. It can at times show a little bit of lag here. So we're running One UI 3, this is Android 11 that it does have. And yes, general performance is pretty quick and snappy. And remember, I've got the 5G version here with the Snapdragon 750G. Now, if they'd gone with, say, the 765G, I think would have been slightly better, or even the newer 780G. But most people, the average person out there, and not like tech junkies like myself, won't really have an issue with the performance. It is very good. Now, the task manager can be a little aggressive, sometimes killing things off in the background, and this is typical kind of Android. But here you can see that that is very, very smooth and fluid. It's just not everything is running at the 120 frames per second. I have noticed that sometimes when swiping down, looking at notifications, there is a little bit of a stutter and a bit of a lag there, and just micro stutters throughout there. But overall, it is good. The general kind of performance you are going to get out of this phone for the price tag. Now, the reception and range of wireless seems to be very good on wireless AC, and it does, with 5G, I've noticed, tend to be a little bit patchy at times. And even my Samsung Galaxy Fold that I do happen to have right here as well, that tends to get a little bit better coverage with the 5G. I don't know why that is. It could be the antennas. It's probably down to the chipset, because this being a mid-range chipset, that one being a flagship, could explain the little bit of a difference there. Call quality has been excellent throughout the time I've been placing calls on this. No complaints from the other end as well. They hear me just fine. So when you first get the phone and power it on, you are greeted with quite a few different bloatware applications, but it's not as bad as some manufacturers that I count up to 22, 25 different bloatware apps. With the Samsung, you're going to get around 10 apps, and you can uninstall them, of course. Most manufacturers are doing this, and I really wish they would tone down on just cramming so much pre-installed rubbish on the phones. So battery life, this here is at 120 Hz. So the screen's calibrated to 200 nits. Like all of my reviews, you can watch all my reviews and see the battery life times there, all with the screen at the same setting. It's a looped benchmark, so it runs until it gets to 20%. 10 hours and 26 minutes is an excellent result for 120 Hz. This realistically is about 7 to 7.5 hours of on-screen time, mixed medium kind of use, not gaming. Gaming, you're looking about 4 to 5 hours of straight gaming. So charge time with the included charger, which is 15 watts, is 81 minutes, which is, it's okay for the battery capacity, 4,500 milliamp hours. I don't think is too bad. No one's going to be really complaining about that, but it's not the quickest out there. And this then was setting the screen refresh rate to 60 Hz if you wanted to save on battery. It does actually give you quite a bit of a boost here. 13 hours and 20 minutes, which is very good. That then will bring up to about an 8 to 8.5 or so hour screen on time for the average kind of user and use. So it probably will last for most people about a day and a half. You'll still end up charging it, I believe, every night, probably before you go to bed. Now you see sometimes even in gallery here, the animation, that's not as smooth as it should be. So there's still a bit of work to do, I believe, with Samsung with those animations. So the Antutu score here for the Snapdragon 750G is good as expected. That's not bad. It's going to be, I think, sufficient enough for most people out there. They want the good performance, well, average, above average performance, really. It's not a low-end chipset, and you still have that 5G support if you needed that. The internal storage, which I believe is UFS 2.2 spec, does show some good results here. So sequential reads and writes, randoms are very, very good, random reads and writes. So that is never going to be a bottleneck of this system. It will be the chipset, of course, with this one. Camera 2 API support, level 3 is present, so that is great. So you can use Gcam ports if you are into that to get just a different kind of style of photo. And we do have a wide vine security level 1. I, of course, expected this with Samsung. HDR10, HDR10 Plus support, and supporting the, of course, 120 hertz there with that. GPS works very well with a very good average signal strength of 35 here, as you can see. So it picks up, sees a lot of satellites, but you won't get an accuracy that is better than 3 meters, sadly, with the Qualcomm chipsets. And wireless speeds for the chipset, you're not really going to get over 200 megabits per second with this one. So my top speeds capped out at 183 megabits per second. And on the lower end, the test point, which is downstairs, quite a bit away from my router, still got 100, which is my bare minimum I want to see. So that is okay. It's not the best for the wireless speeds, but again, for what it is, a mid-range phone, this is acceptable. Audio now with this one. As I mentioned, the call quality has been good for me, no problems. The earpiece sounds great and the mics do a good job. There's noise cancelling too. So our wired 3.5 audio sounds clear. There's no static. And overall, I think the quality is great. It might not be the best I've ever heard, but I think, again, for the price of the phone, that it's good, it's decent, and Bluetooth audio is working fine, Bluetooth 5 audio with no problems there. So I will test out the loudspeakers now, 100% volume, and the sound comes out the bottom here and out the earpiece. And these loudspeakers, they might not be the loudest, but they've got a hint of bass, and they do sound a lot better than I thought they would be. Gaming performance of the Snapdragon 750 is not too bad. So this is Genshin Impact, a very demanding game, and I have it set to the lower settings, and you do occasionally see a few little stutters, frame dips, the occasional little just pause where the whole thing just does a quick little freeze for a second, like just then. But overall, it is playable. That's the main thing. All of the demanding titles out there on the Android store will be playable with this phone. And for PUBG, we can play with the ultra frame rate option if you set it to smooth or balanced. And as expected, the game is running flawlessly here, fine at this setting with the smooth that I have, and no real noticeable lag. Looking down the sights here, just fine. So it's going to be great, this phone, for PUBG. After 1 hour of gaming, thermals did peak at approximately 43 degrees. So it gets a little warm, but these temperatures aren't bad. Over to our cameras now. So there is one area of disappointment for me, and that is 4K footage. Ultra wide that you're looking at right now does not have any electronic image stabilization, so you're going to need a gimbal. The main camera as well, 4K, does not have any electronic image stabilization, only optical, and it rocks all over the place. It just does not look good. It's not usable footage. And that is also 1080p 60. There is no electronic image stabilization. So right now I am using 1080p, this has electronic image stabilization, but it still isn't that good. It's not the best I have seen. This now you can see is quite a bit smoother. We have the electronic image stabilization, overall very good quality, so it does support 1080p 30 and 60 frames per second. And then looking at that photo quality, I think the stills from the main camera do come out reasonably good. Sometimes the white balance is a little bit off, sometimes there's a little bit of oversaturation. Low light performance isn't bad. The optical image stabilization definitely helps with a longer shutter rate, letting on more light, capturing a little bit more there, giving us a bit more detail compared to other phones out there. So I did do a camera comparison between the Mi 11 Lite and then this phone here, and that did take better video. Disappointing video performance at 4K on this phone, so they don't allow us to use electronic image stabilization, Samsung, when shooting in 4K, and also 1080p 60 has the electronic image stabilization disabled. Then when I had it enabled with the samples I showed you at 1080p, it wasn't really that great. Other phones can do better, so they're falling behind in the image stabilization here, and I would not hold my breath and wait for Samsung to patch this and add. We cannot assume that they are going to add electronic image stabilization to 4K video. I don't believe they will do this. I think they want that separation between their flagships and the mid-range. So if you want better video quality, you need to buy one of their higher end phones from them. It's marketing, and that's what the brands do there, of course. So the performance in general is pretty good. Battery life is great for the 120 Hertz. That's one definite positive there. Charge time's okay, so just over an hour. I don't think too many people are going to be moaning about that. And it gets up to about 40% in just 30 minutes or so, which is again, good there. Now the screen is very, very good. Good brightness, touch response is excellent. It's just that let down a little bit by this build quality, that when you feel it in person, even though the awesome blue does actually look awesome, I really do like this color, it just feels a little, I wouldn't go as far as to say tacky, but it feels a little cheap. The frame around the outside is plastic and the build is solid. It is good, don't get me wrong, but I do believe that this plastic will eventually show a lot of little fine scratches, get dirt in there, and start to look even cheaper if you don't, of course, put a case or cover it up. So that's a little area of disappointment there. And otherwise, it's quite a decent phone. It is good, just a letdown really with the video performance is the big main one there for me, that they should enable that electronic image stabilization. So thank you so much for watching my review here of the Samsung A52 5G. Do subscribe for more up and coming reviews from me. Bye for now.